longer we take means more kids struggling for longer. But we have to get this right.
Tonight, Justin Trudeau takes his election campaign to Winnipeg and defends his record on Indigenous issues.
I'm sure that the investment community is incredibly shocked and rocked by these double decisions here.
Another court appeal and another setback for the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion.
A lot of challenges I face are translating, because a lot of these English cartoons, they use English slang.
And SpongeBob in anime in Ojibwe, Cree, and Soto. We meet a student who translates cartoons to preserve his language. Good evening, welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward. While in Winnipeg on Thursday, Justin Trudeau told media if re-elected, his government would commit to addressing youth suicide. This follows an event earlier this week where child advocates from across Canada called out the government for not doing enough to combat the high numbers. Brittany Hobson reports.
We need to do a better job of addressing.
Liberal Party leader Justin Trudeau admitted his government needs to do more to combat the high number of youth suicides in Canada, but could offer no concrete plans on what the Liberals would do if re-elected this fall. Instead, Trudeau highlighted what the party has done over the past 4 years.
It takes concrete investments, which is why we've made investments in mental health service workers, in a hotline to help out for Indigenous communities, in investments in education and in new schools and in new health centres, and investments in Indigenous languages and culture.
Earlier this week, child advocates from across Canada released a new paper on youth suicides. They also called on the federal government to implement a national suicide prevention strategy. Trudeau said it's not just about creating a strategy, it's about making investments in Indigenous communities.
Every day longer we take means more kids struggling for longer. But we have to get this right, and we have to do it in the full spirit of respect and partnership, and that is what our government has been focused on and will continue to be focused on.
Also this week, research out of Manitoba showed First Nation people are dying at much younger rates than non-Indigenous. The rate of suicide attempts for First Nation people is 4 times higher than for all other Manitobans. In August, God's Lake First Nation activated a state of emergency because of a suicide crisis. Trudeau said there is still a long way to go.
What took generations and indeed centuries to break, it's going to take time to fix.
Brielle Beardy Linklater is a Two-Spirit advocate in Manitoba. She said she wasn't impressed with what Trudeau had to say.
So what he needs to be doing is listening when people are talking, not being defensive by reinstating the same thing over and over, which is being recited, because it's all public relations. It's all a game.
Beardy Linklater says youth need more resources, and they need them now.
It's a big problem, and it's growing, and it's an epidemic, and we're being ignored. Our people are not being heard, so this is the time to do it.
Brittany Hobson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Of course, the focus of the federal election campaign today was the bombshell photos and videos of a younger Trudeau. Numerous instances of Trudeau dressed in dark makeup have come to light in the last 12 hours. The video was shot sometime in the early 1990s and appears to show a young Trudeau covered in dark makeup dancing. That is on top of the 2 other photos that have surfaced. Speaking with reporters today in Winnipeg, Trudeau was asked if there may be other photos out there that have yet to surface. Here's his response.
The recent pictures that came out, I had not remembered. And I think the question is, how can you not remember that? The fact is, I didn't understand how hurtful this is to people who live with discrimination every single day. I have always acknowledged that I come from a place of privilege, but I now need to acknowledge that that comes with a massive blind spot. I have dedicated my leadership and my service to Canada to try and counter intolerance and racism everywhere I can, but this has been a personally a moment where I've had to reflect on the fact that wanting to do good and wanting to do better simply isn't good enough, and you need to take responsibility for mistakes that hurt people who thought I was an ally. Hopefully many of them.
Conservative leader Andrew Scheer is confirming that his party received the video of Trudeau in blackface and gave it to the media.
I can say, as it relates to the video, that a concerned individual who did see this video did bring it to our campaign, and our campaign turned it over to a responsible news outlet for verification. So that is my knowledge of those events.
But what's the time?
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is condemning Trudeau's actions, saying the Liberal leader has hurt many Canadians. Singh is accusing Trudeau of exhibiting a pattern of racist behavior.
It's a difficult thing to think about. You know, how do you respond to somebody? How do you look someone in the eye that's mocking the lived reality that I've lived, but more importantly that so many Canadians have lived? I think he's got a lot to answer for. And that pattern of behavior of making light of the struggles that people face, to me, I think Canadians are going to have a lot of questions about his sincerity, a lot of questions about who is the real Mr. Trudeau. And I think those are very legitimate questions that Canadians are going to be asking.
Voters are having their say on this. The reactions have been mixed, with many saying they were initially offended, but others accepting Trudeau's apology, saying this shouldn't define his campaign.
I think he did the best thing possible by fessing up to it.
Personally, I know it offended a lot of people. It doesn't offend me because people make mistakes, people evolve. I may make mistakes, you know. Making mistakes is part of being human.
It's not a good look, but at least he's acknowledging that there's more out there. So I guess it's good, but still, people will still find it offensive.
But people should not pay attention to these kind of things.
Why not?
I mean, it's the work of the person, right? That defines that person.
Well, we'd like to hear what you have to say. Here's how to continue the conversation. Send your emails to news@aptn.ca. Find us online at aptnnews.ca and on youtube.com/aptnnews. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for the latest Indigenous news. Earlier this week, we told you about an intense search for a young woman in Vancouver who was missing. She has now been found safe. Miranda Johnson was reported missing on September 14th. The 31-year-old is a dancer with the Butterflies in Spirit, a group that raises awareness about murdered and missing women and girls. Last night, her friends were notified by healthcare professionals that she was safe and is being cared for. Today, her friends are removing the missing posters that were put up to help locate her.
I'm so grateful that this is a success story. She's safe. I saw her in person. Details are still coming in. And I want to thank everybody for coming together. The community really pulled together to help find her.
Another hurdle for the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion. More on that coming up after the break. Here's a look at Friday's weather forecast, starting on a sunny east coast. 24 for Fredericton, 20 in Charlottetown. Showers for Nain with a high of 17. Rain, and 22 for Happy Valley Goose Bay. A sunny day in Montreal with a high of 25. Rain, and 18 for Chibougamau. 26 in Toronto and Peterborough under sunny skies. 20 for Thunder Bay with partly cloudy skies. 22 under the sun in Sioux Lookout. Showers, and 17 for Churchill. 19 and rain for God's Lake. A rainy day for Winnipeg and Gimli with a high of 24. 20 in Saskatoon. 19 in Swift Current and North Battleford. Showers and 13 in Uranium City. Rain and 14 for Stony Rapids. Welcome back. The Squamish Nation and the City of Vancouver have won an appeal that questions the federal environmental assessment process, which the province of BC relied on to issue permits to the Trans Mountain Pipeline. APTN's Tina House has more on this story.
It's another setback for the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion. The BC court is now urging the province to reevaluate its environmental assessment certificate for the pipeline and its conditions. West Coast environmental law lawyer Eugene Kung, who does not represent the Squamish but does represent the 6 First Nations who were granted a federal appeal, says it's a big step in a long, drawn-out battle.
The provincial government of BC has another opportunity to put in place measures in the form of conditions that address some of the very serious and significant concerns that they and the residents of BC have raised about the dangerous and risky Trans Mountain expansion project.
BC's Minister of Environment, George Heyman, says they will not use this latest decision as a tactic to stop the pipeline, but maintains their view of the project. We believe this is a wrong-headed project. We believe it's bad for British Columbia. But that decision was taken by the federal government. We're exercising every jurisdiction we can to defend British Columbia's environment, our coast, our jobs, with regulations and with environmental assessment conditions as appropriate. Grand Chief Stuart Phillips says he's happy to see the 6 First Nations granted a federal appeal and this latest provincial win by the Squamish Nation.
Both decisions put together represent a very significant challenge in terms of economic certainty for TMX. I'm sure that the investment community is incredibly shocked and rocked by these double decisions here. So I've always maintained that this project will never see the light of day.
As a result, it's my view that the underlying certificate from British Columbia now prohibits the issuing of future permits for construction. So if there are any outstanding permits that have not been issued yet, it's my view that those should not be issued until the underlying certificate has been addressed, which could have an impact on delaying construction.
Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
Business, especially resource extraction, and First Nations are often depicted as sworn enemies. Today in Ottawa, a business forum tried to dispel that myth. As APTN's Todd Lamoran reports, the discussion centered around the oil and gas industry, one where economic reconciliation may be possible.
The overwhelming majority of First Nations want to work with us in order to create economic opportunities for the communities.
Brian Schmidt is president and CEO of Tamarack Valley Energy, and he was before an audience at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute. Schmidt says the relationship between business and Indigenous people is misunderstood.
Most First Nations work quite well with industry. They're tough negotiators. They want benefits for their people. They want to lift their people out of poverty. And one way to do that is get them employed.
Tabitha Bull heads up the Canadian Council of Aboriginal Business. She told everyone that Indigenous self-determination needs to have an economy to go with it.
We still hear a lot of bias around the risk of doing business with Aboriginal business, or that it may cost more, and we're really breaking down those biases and removing those stereotypes.
Despite this, Bull believes things are getting better.
The interesting thing is corporations are coming to us because they want to do business with Indigenous business and they want to learn the best way to do that, which is a very positive, optimistic thing that we're seeing.
However, some of the questions from the audience focused on Indigenous-led opposition to projects like the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion, in particular on how to change the land defenders' minds. There wasn't any easy answer.
I'm not sure, but I do know this. We are cutting our carbon footprint massively. Huge change in the oil sands.
But I think we also need to respect that Indigenous beliefs really look at the climate and the fear about what may happen.
Schmidt also addressed the issue of whether a project should be cancelled if there isn't 100% agreement.
So if you have 39 of 40 First Nations, should that project be stopped? And I think that's a question we have to ask ourselves in Canada. And it takes First Nations involvement to answer that question. You know, is that something we want to do? And I don't think we've had that conversation.
Regardless of some of the concerns from participants, the overall message to them was a simple one. Indigenous engagement is the key to the future of Canada's oil and gas industry. Todd Lamarand, APTN National News, Ottawa.
The creation of sacred spaces, street name changes, and monuments for residential school survivors were just some of the ideas voiced by residents in a city-led reconciliation event. Our Charlotte Moore Jacobs in Yellowknife attended the event and has this story.
There are many opinions on the road to reconciliation. These thoughts circulated at a municipal event in the capital of the Northwest Territories. It drew over 50 people. City of Yellowknife Indigenous Relations Advisor Maggie McCready organized the event to garner ideas on what should make an action plan.
I'm hoping to work with the city on just gathering the information that we get from this document in hopes of putting it towards a reconciliation action plan that the city can implement in the new year.
You talked to me quite a lot as well about identity within that.
TRC Commissioner Marie Wilson moderated a panel of notable Northerners to kick off the evening. Roxanne Landry, a residential school survivor, says the city must invest in healing.
Intergenerational residential school, PTSD. Because right now, there is no sacred space to go, to vent your trauma, to feed the fire, to cry, just to let out a big scream without anybody phoning the police.
Ernie Bernhardt, a residential school survivor and former social worker, says the city grew too fast and it left some people behind.
Realizing that a lot of your citizens in the city are residential school survivors. And you have to remember too that you got to include their kids and their kids, because if you're only giving us lip service, we're going to read it right away.
Halfway through the night, the room was divided into smaller groups for deeper discussion.
To know more about the history, about their culture, I think that is very important.
Many shared.
I mean, sometimes when we hear the history, it's like, well, Indigenous peoples were here, and then white people showed up and started mining and all these great things, and then the story of Indigenous people kind of ends at that point where white people came and formed this mine and formed this town.
A monument for survivors of a Cacho Hall residential school and a new cultural center were just some of many ideas.
So it's known as the Bermond capital, but we want to be known for something else.
More public reconciliation gatherings are scheduled in October in the nearby communities of Dilo and Detta. Charlotte Moore Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
A university student is translating popular cartoons in Indigenous languages. You'll want to stick around for that story. It's coming up after the break. Here's a look at the rest of Friday's weather forecast, picking back up in northern Alberta. Showers and 16 for High Level and Fort McMurray. A sunny day with 18 as the high for Medicine Hat, 16 and sunny in Lethbridge, 18 and sunny for Vancouver, 22 under the sun for Kamloops, 17 and sunny skies for Fort Nelson and Prince George, rain and 15 in Smithers, rain in Old Crow with a high of 11, similar temperatures in Whitehorse and Watson Lake, 19 with showers for Fort Liard and Trout Lake, 15 under sunny skies in Wrigley, a high of 3 for Sax Harbor, 9 in Colville Lake, 10 in Arviette, 8 in Whale Cove, snow and 2 in Cambridge Bay, -2 for Resolute, +2 in Joe Haven. Welcome back. A 19-year-old Ojibwe student from Peguis First Nation is taking a new spin on learning his language. That's because he translates popular animated cartoons and puts them up for anyone to watch for free. Jolene Banning has the details.
So now you're going to say, I'm going to visit my friend at the library.
Western Sutherland dubs over popular cartoons like Sailor Moon, SpongeBob SquarePants, and anime in Ojibwe, Cree, and Saulteaux. Sutherland, who is enrolled in linguistics and Indigenous history at the University of Manitoba, gets help from his grandmother Valerie Hudson and language teacher Millie Moore. This project might be fun and engaging, but not without its challenges.
A lot of challenges I face are translating, because a lot of these English cartoons, they use English slang, English terms that, don't really exist in our language.
Another challenge Sutherland strives to overcome is his language being forgotten. For many Indigenous children forced to attend residential schools, their language was forbidden. Hudson remembers Cree and Ojibwe being spoken in the home. Today, with the help of these cartoons, she remembers the words she was once punished for speaking. It also helps having another fluent speaker to talk with and confirm you said the word correctly. Language teacher Moore provides just that.
I'm a teacher. I teach Ojibwe.
However, it wasn't that long ago that speaking your language could be considered unsafe in a school setting.
And I'm only used to my dialect that I was taught Ojibwe in the schoolyard. But if we were caught speaking our language in the schoolyard, we used to get straps on our hands.
Sutherland wanted to use cartoons as a way to connect with the younger generation, to give them a chance to hear their voices in mainstream media, something missing for a long time.
Now how about, how could I say, go outside?
Hudson beams with pride as she helps her grandson's desires to learn his language and get her involved in his cartoon project. For Sutherland, there is a joy when he sees his grandmother among other language speakers taking a lead.
They're speaking from their hearts when they do these cartoons because it's their language.
The cartoons can be found on Weston's Facebook site and on his YouTube channel, First Nation Treasures. Language teacher Millie Moore offers language class at the Weechi-Wakanak Learning Center every Saturday. I'm Jolene Banning for APTN National News.
Great story to leave you with tonight. And that is your APTN National News for this Thursday. There are a few web-exclusive stories over on our website. That's aptnnews.ca. And never miss an update by downloading the APTN News app. I'm Dennis Ford. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back here tomorrow.